Hi students, welcome to Unit 4, Lesson 2, Operant Conditioning, and the guy responsible for this one is B.F. Skinner. Here we will talk about the processes of operant conditioning and describe some examples. Operant conditioning begins with B.F. Skinner and his escapades in conditioning pigeons to guide missiles during World War II. He took these principles and applied them to, well, basically everything that the baby boomer generation did within the next 10 years. So it got instituted into public schools, and you live with the after effects of that. Operant conditioning actually gets its foundations in Edward Thorndike's law of effect. Now, the law of effect, there's not many laws in psychology, laws being these are absolute non-negotiables, but this is a law. The law of effect is that rewarded behavior is likely to be repeated. Edward Thorndike came up with this principle in the early 1900s. He analyzed it with his own cats, put cats into what he called a puzzle box to see how long it would take a cat to get out if there is a reward at the end. So there's a saucer of milk. The cat can find its way out of the box. And Skinner took these ideas. In B.F. Skinner's case, he took this principle, the rewarded behavior is likely to be repeated, and put it to human beings that learning behavior as a result of effects of consequences. So we are likely to commit to behaviors that get us desired results. We do this because of reinforcement. A reinforcer is something that strengthens the likelihood that the response is going to happen again. He devised something known as the operant chamber, or the Skinner box, nicknamed Skinner box, which contains a bar that an animal can push to obtain a food reinforcer. Reinforcer strengthens a response. So how did you get the food pellet? How did you get the reward when you pressed on the bar? You did it because you turned around in a circle. So you're going to turn around in a circle again. That's what this guinea pig is learning. That's what the pigeons were learning. And so, when I press this bar, I get a food pellet. How do I get to press the bar? How do I get the food pellet? I repeat a behavior. I'll show you some examples of this in class, of course, but the consequences of behavior is reinforcement. All right, so when your dog begs for food at the table, you give him or her a scrap. The result is that the begging will increase. So now you have reinforced, strengthened the likelihood that the dog is going to beg when you sit down at the table for a meal. There are positive and negative reinforcers. Now, positive plus, we add a stimulus that increases the frequency of a behavior when it's presented. This can be something simple, a smile, an A+, positive. It's a positive reinforcer that will increase the likelihood that the behavior is going to happen again. So what was the behavior that got the reward? That's going to happen again. All right, if I'm hungry, I get food. That's a positive reinforcer. If you are an athlete, you play sports. If you like to drive, you get to drive the car. So positive reinforcers strengthen the likelihood the behavior will happen again. A negative reinforcer is not necessarily a punishment. So don't get confused with punishers and negative reinforcers. Just remember that a reinforcer is likely to increase a behavior. So an unpleasant stimulus that increases the frequency of a behavior when it is removed or avoided. A lot of times this is pain. Pain can be a negative reinforcer. Like if I have a rock in my shoe, ouch, this stimulus causes me pain. So I'm going to stop what I do, take the rock out. The negative reinforcer is out of the question now. The behavior that I'm going to do that again when I get a rock in my shoe, yeah, because I don't like pain of rocks in my shoes. Remember, discomfort. Okay, social disapproval and fear are unpleasant stimuli. And so as for social disapproval, I'm not going to act like a fool in front of other people because I don't want the negative attention when I act like a fool in front of other people. So, all right, some practical examples of a negative reinforcer, something that strengthens a behavior once it's done. So hot sun, we're going to move to the shade. The negative reinforcer is the hot sun. We're tired, we're going to go to sleep. Take out the trash to avoid your mother yelling at you. So you want to get rid of your mom yelling at you. That's the negative reinforcer. Are you likely to repeat the behavior? Yeah, because you stopped your mom's yelling. Not your mothers yell. Mothers don't yell. Positive and negative reinforcement might look a little bit like this when used together. So if your goal is to get better grades, we start with, okay, we want to study, right? We want to get good grades. Positive reinforcement are our good grades. Will that increase the likelihood that we study more? Yes. If we get poor grades, we're going to begin studying. This is something that we've been told will help to improve our grades. And so if we don't buy into it to begin with, we might say to ourselves, well, I've been getting poor grades. Negative reinforcement is bad grades. So let me try this studying thing, since everybody says that's where it's at. I want to graduate someday, and so I'm going to start studying. We start studying, and the now positive reinforcer is good grades. I'm going to increase that behavior. Here we combine that with punishment. Punishment, understand, is weakening a response by following it with unpleasant consequences, and sometimes it can be used with reinforcers. So punishment is meant to decrease weakening a response by following it with unpleasant consequences. If you play sports, you get an F, we're going to take you out of the sport, and that's going to, unpleasant consequence is you don't get to play. So it's going to add behavior, reinforce the behavior of studying to get you better grades. A primary reinforcer is one of the things that we use to reward your behavior. So primary means it's basic for survival. This includes things like food, water, adequate warmth, basic for survival. And then secondary reinforcers are those which help us to get primary reinforcers. So reinforcement that comes to represent a primary reinforcer, be it money, attention, and social approval. Most common secondary reinforcer is money. Money is a high motivator in our culture, but attention and social approval can also be equally motivating. It just depends on who you are. All right, with reinforcement, you might ask yourself a question like this behavior, like what do I get out of behavior like overeating, smoking, and procrastination? Well, guys like Skinner, even Bandura, other theorists would say that we act stupid and we do silly things because there is something that we are getting out of that behavior. And that's where behaviorists differ. Like, what's the reward, what's the reinforcer, or what's the punishment that we get out of acting stupidly? If my whole goal is to get attention and I act stupid, well, then I've gotten what I want out of that, right? I get the attention. That's the positive reinforcer because I originally wanted attention. But in order for me to know that, I have to really kind of question my own motives and play these tapes all the way through. Like, why am I acting the way that I am? Why am I smoking? Well, because all my friends smoke and I want to fit in. Well, there's your answer. The positive reinforcer in that case is fitting in and not standing out. Why do I overeat? Well, maybe you're getting something out of that. Procrastination. I mean, most teenagers tell me that they're procrastinators. That's a choice, right? Behaviorists would say that you have a role to play when it comes to procrastination. I'm getting off track here, but let's go back to operant conditioning. Operant conditioning is stronger when delivery of the reinforcer is immediate. So when you act, you get that reinforcer directly after you commit the behavior. And that's how it's kind of different from classical conditioning. In classical conditioning, we're not exactly aware of the fact that we are associating two things that go together. You know, you hear thunder or you see lightning and you know thunder's coming. Oof, that's a condition that you put together way long ago. So classical conditioning is kind of instinctual acts. Operant conditioning, I have a role to play when it comes to getting my reward. The larger the reinforcer, the more effective. All right, there are some basics of operant conditioning and positive and negative reinforcement along with punishments.